We do record these, by the way. I'm going to mute myself for 1 second and put something back in the fridge before I have a science experiment. I'll be right back. Well, good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock in the frozen tundras of Omaha. I'm here. This is Bob Meter. I'm your chairman of NAFI. I'm glad you could all make it tonight. Tonight's guest is Don Marinelli. Don is somebody I met at Redbird Migration. Very happy that he took the time out during the busy holiday season to join us. We'll be talking about reaching and teaching millennials, which is one of the reasons I added the Learjet. If anybody travels through Denver, you'll recognize that airplane. It's an open discussion. A little bit of background about Don. He's retired from Carnegie Mellon. He 31 years of service to the university, along with the late computer science professor Randy Pausch. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, that's it. It was Randy Pausch.
Randy Pausch. He co-founded the world-renowned Carnegie Mellon Entertainment Technology Center. He's also and Dr. Marinelli was also a tenured professor of drama and arts management at Carnegie Mellon. And there's a whole lot more to this. I won't read his entire CV.
Great. Thanks for doing that.
I will say that The Comet and the Tornado is a book that Don wrote about the time he spent creating the entertainment center. And what really intrigued me about Don's presentation at Redbird Migration was that as a drama, well, why don't you tell the story about how you wandered over to the IT folks, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. Now, do you want me to show my PowerPoint that I showed
Sure.
at the migration?
Yeah, I can flip the. I'll give you control of the screen for a few minutes. You may want to back your mic down or your speakers down a little bit more.
All right. I took it down another notch.
That's much better.
Okay. I have.
And you'll be asked a question. There you go.
I agree. Yes, I do agree to share.
There we go.
So let me share that. Let me close. Not close. No, I don't want to. I don't want to leave the meeting. I do want to. Let's see here.
Don, you'll need to select items to share.
PowerPoint?
Yeah, you'll need to select items to share, Don. I think he accidentally closed.
Nice. Let me say, it said it quit. So let's do this again.
Oh, straight. I'm glad we are.
I'm joining the meeting again.
Good, nice eyes.
I got some other nice bites too. You want to see it? What happened to you? Oh, yeah. Come down there.
I might have to go through the, actually I have you on the phone. Maybe that'll be sufficient. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
We can see the Learjet. yet.
Yeah, that's mine. Let me read.
Yeah,
Let me go back to. Bear with me one moment, Don.
I'm here.
Okay, and I'm going to bring you back as presenter.
Okay, I'm clicking OK.
And we have a gray screen. I know what the problem is, and this is, I apologize to everybody. Don, on your meeting controls,
Yes.
you want to, where it says view items to select, you want to make sure that the PowerPoint's turned on, is clicked on. There'll be a drop-down menu there.
Okay, screen sharing, phone conference, attendee list, chat. It's select items to share. Okay.
Oops, and we think we lost you again. I think he closed by accident there.
This session was terminated unexpected. We don't know what's going on. This is my first start meeting experience.
Yeah, and you know what? We've lost you entirely on start meeting, so why don't you go ahead and restart that? But anyway, why don't we go ahead and just talk, and we'll get caught. Tell you what, email me the presentation real quick. I can get it up on my screen.
Oh, you know what? Why don't we do that? Okay.
Yeah. In the meantime, we'll do a Leah Sayer and dance.
Okay.
Sorry about this, everybody.
Yeah, this is Don Knight, Bob. Hey.
Yes, sir.
One thing we might point out to everybody that if you want to see the presentation from migration, it's online. I don't have the URL, but maybe somebody can find it and hand it out to me.
Okay. That might be but we should have Don's presentation here in just a moment.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm just saying, you know.
In the future,
because there's probably things covered in that long presentation at migration that might not be covered tonight, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, you know what? That's a good point. We'll bring that up.
I mean, mine's on the way to you, Bob.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your patience.
So what's the significance of the tail number on that Lear?
Does anybody recognize, while we're waiting, let's play a little Trivial Pursuit. Does anybody recognize that Lear?
Got to be something good if it's in the air and space or.
No, it's not air and space. Not bad.
That's in Denver Airport.
Yeah, that's the one hanging up in and I keep wanting to say, I'm showing my age when I say that. That's the one hanging up in Denver.
I was wondering where I left that.
That is the first airplane that landed at the new airport, or the first GA airplane anyway, and it was retired and hung up in the. It's over by the Southwest gates. Don, it's taking its time coming through, so why don't we go ahead and start talking about it, and we'll figure it out from there. I'll keep watching for it to come in.
And for those of us just using audio without the computer, you'll explain a little bit?
Yes, please.
I'm in Denver, and that's Denver International Airport now.
Yep, and that is the plane. That is the plane. I forget. It's the guy who, a philanthropist and a gentleman who had a very large cable company's aircraft, and that airplane flew around the world and set a world speed record.
John Malone.
Yeah. So, Don, why don't we go ahead and just get started verbally, and we'll pretend there's pictures out there. Go ahead. Why don't you talk a little bit about your experience at Carnegie Mellon, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, very. All right, gang. I am, as Bob said, I'm a retired professor from Carnegie Mellon University, and the way I got to Carnegie Mellon University was through drama. And the CMU has the oldest school of drama in America, very prestigious. And as soon as I got my doctorate in theater from the University of Pittsburgh, I went over to CMU. It was like a dream come true. I used to tell my father, I'm playing for the Yankees, but he could never understand that theater stuff anyway. And so I was the associate head of drama for 15 years until the mid-'90s, when I noticed basically a significant change in the composition of young people. We would travel the country auditioning kids to go for acting, music theater, you name it. And in the mid-'90s, I noticed that fewer and fewer of them really seemed to have an appreciation, let alone love, for the theater. And so I found myself asking them, if you really had anything to do, I mean, if you could do anything on a Friday, money was no object, how many of you would go to the theater? And very few hands went up, and that shocked me. And then I said, well, how many of you would go to cinema? And more hands went up. And then I said, well, how many of you would prefer to sit home with a case of beer, 2 supreme pizzas from Domino's, and play video games? And practically every hand went up. And I thought, okay, I really have a very simple choice here. I can either attempt to understand what is this appeal of interactive digital media, because that's really what a video game is. What is the appeal of interactive digital media that they find so fascinating and so enjoyable? Or I could simply lament the fact that my art form has become a dying art form, and frankly, the young people aren't interested in it, and I could just be satisfied becoming an old fart, puffing on a pipe and sitting in my classroom talking about, Antigone. So I did something at that time that was unheard of, and in fact, frankly, is still unheard of, and that is I was a drama professor who knocked on the door of the School of Computer Science and asked them if they had any need or use for a drama professor. And instead of laughing me out of the building, which is what I expected, they embraced me tremendously, welcoming me, saying that I brought skill sets to them that no one had, and they would be honored if I could be there. And that came with a very large raise in salary, too, and I realized that I had to confront the bias and prejudice that I felt that these geeks, were simply that, we're like cretins who only spoke mathematics, when in fact they turned out to be among the most welcoming and enlightened individuals I'd met. And we artists, if anything, we were the ones who were the most biased. So I went over to the School of Computer Science, and within 2 years met Randy Couch, who had also just returned to Carnegie Mellon, and he and I were teamed up to create the Entertainment Technology Center. We called it the Entertainment Technology Center was because we were going to do much more than just video games. So we were going to do animation, we were going to do post-production, which was motion capture, we were going to do edutainment, which became actually a spin-off company. And that's what I wound up doing. So that led me to a real analysis of the new generation, the Millennials, which are called 21st century digital natives. Are we okay? Should I keep going?
Please do, Don. Yeah, I had to mute somebody. We were getting a lot of feedback on one mic. I just muted him.
Everybody who's listening on this particular facility, everybody who's listening should mute their phone right now.
Yes, please do. Yeah, I asked everybody to do that before, and I'm picking out the high res ones that are coming through. So, anyway, go on.
Okay, let's continue. So, if we were to try to find one thing that has affected our young people today, it is interactive technology. It's not just technology per se, but it's the interactive quality of that. And that's resulted in a generation that truly exists in multiple realities. I mean, there's the most obvious reality, which is what we call the corporeal reality, which is day-to-day living. But they are also inhabitants of a virtual reality, the world of virtuality that exists all over the ether, the internet. They are also attuned to augmented reality. Augmented reality, probably for this audience, would best be understood as the head-mounted displays that pilots are being provided with, where on your your windshield is projected information that you use in targeting and what have you. And then there's even another form of reality called alternate reality, which is a form of gaming. But I think that I've made the point that young people today live in multiple worlds. They are also affected by the fact that there is ubiquitous information accessibility. Nowadays, if there isn't Wi-Fi available, no matter where you go, you're really viewed as behind the times. I used to do a lot of work in Korea. Korea was the first country where every square inch had access to broadband, and the U.S. is basically pretty close to doing that. We know that in terms of hardware, this is a generation for whom cell phones, PDAs, tablets, consoles, PCs, these are literally extensions of their limbs. And as a result of that, there's ubiquitous social and casual gaming. This is something that has expanded beyond young people. I mean, we've got the soccer moms, Zynga, the game company Zynga with Farmville. Trust me, it wasn't kids playing Farmville, it was soccer moms playing Farmville. And then we had the advent of edutainment and serious games, and that's currently a very hot topic as the millennials are finding traditional education to just be boring. Even if we consider they all have attention deficit disorder, well, guess what? That's what we're going to have to deal with, which is why there's the rise of edutainment, in other words, using game dynamics for educational purpose, and serious games, which are using games to impart serious knowledge, a lot of which is affective, things like games for health, games, exercise games, games for skill advancement, you name it. And then, of course, we have even the more serious side of this, which is called simulation and training. The U.S. Army gives $50 million a year to the University of Southern California, where they have the Institute for Creative Technology, which is primarily coming up with simulation and training scenarios. And on top of all of that, we've got the advent of intelligent appliances, interactive robotics, and the ubiquity of themed entertainment, both theme parks. I mean, hospitals are now completely redoing and rebuilding themselves so that they look more like home or more appealing, and museums are in a significant rebranding because they realize that for young people, they're viewed as repositories of dead things rather than anything that's really engaging or is reaching out and that the students can mine. Now, where I would go from here is to focus on the very specific dynamics of the millennial generation. But before I begin, does anyone want to ask me something or respond to what I just said about the ubiquity of interactivity?
I'm going to open up all the mics again, and if anybody has a question, please feel free to ask.
Okay, if not, then let's just keep going. Okay,
please do.
One of the key things that makes this the millennials so different, and frankly, it's not just the millennials, it's every subsequent generation, is the fact that generational change has sped up to a degree that we're not even familiar with. In fact, the closest you can come to understanding how the generations have changed is looking at the advent of new operating systems for technology. I mean, generations, according to the Bible, used to be 20 years. That's gone. I mean, it's now about 2 years. From a sociological point of view, those of us on the phone, I'm going to take a guess, are baby boomers, which means we were born between 1945 and approximately 1962. We were followed by the Generation X. The Generation X goes up until about 1981. The generation that we're talking about, the Generation Y, also known as the Millennials, starts in the very late 70s and goes up to the mid-1990s. And the generation from the 1990s now, basically the newest generation, they're called digital natives because they are the ones who they've known technology from when they were in the playpen. And interestingly enough, sociologists are now trying to describe the newest generation, those being born now, and the current term that's being used is plural, meaning that they really are right and left brain. But again, keep in mind how often either you, your spouse, your kids are saying they need a new phone, or they need a new tablet, or they need a new console. That speed of technological change is really quite reflective of the speed of generational change. I always would point out to my students that who do you think reads 17 magazine? 17-year-olds wouldn't be caught dead reading 17 magazine. It's 12-year-olds who read 17 magazine, so they know what it's like to be, quote, a grown-up. So that's the reality we're dealing with. So in addition to this constant change of generations, where there is no such thing as a teenager, there are 13-year-olds, and then there are 15-year-olds, and then it almost comes on a yearly declension thereafter. We also have to recognize the millennials and the digital natives as a truly ethnic and multicultural diverse generation. And I think that you can see that in your own neighborhoods or where you live if you simply take a look at the amount of the variety of cuisines that are available. And the shocking things, I was in Minnesota not too long ago, and I'm looking around and I'm like, I'm very confused. I thought these were all supposed to be Nordics. And then you discover that the greatest concentration of Somalis in America is in Minneapolis. And it's the same thing trying to perceive of Detroit as a leading Arab center. And my daughter lives in Chicago, and it might as well be Warsaw. I mean, you can see the diversity of, and it's not, I'm not even going to say it's a melting pot, but the country is more diverse than ever before, let alone the fact that because of cable television, like my daughter, who's 26, lives in Chicago, her favorite channel is BBC America. It's like, who would have thought that? Along those lines, within 50 years, the U.S. will be a plurality nation. We will be comprised of many different tribes, shall we say. Within 6 years, minority children will be the majority of children in America. Hispanic and Asian populations will double by 2040, and all of these are in transformation right now. You can see it no matter where you live, I would say. All right, let's, Bob, I'll just continue. Okay, then let's look at how they perceive time and space, because I think this is very important. Since they're living in an essentially nonlinear world, they're expecting a nonlinear curriculum. As one who's been in colleges and universities my entire life, I can tell you right now that the prescription of education is really going by the boards. And it's becoming much more one of choice. And because of technology affords the individual what we call agency. Agency means choice. They're able to choose. And flexibility equals agency. And when you have young people for whom multiple realities are accepted as simply different dimensions of existence, this changes everything. Because even a virtual world can be persistent. In other words, even their fantasy world can have a complete life of its own. And they are familiar with omnipresence in the sense that, well, I'm living in multiple worlds at the same time. You can see it with the way they check their phones. I mean, to find out what messages have come in from who, where. If we want to be smug, we simply say, that they all have obsessive-compulsive disorder, except when your phone rings and you go to answer it immediately because you want to know who's calling. Then we call it wisdom. So they definitely have an altered perception of time and of space. And one of the things I've always liked about flight, what I didn't mention and Bob didn't mention is I'm an Air Force veteran myself, having done 6 years in the Air Force Reserve as an education specialist. So I've got some of the military insight as well. One thing that you all know is that they're a technophile generation. They love technology. But they see technology as a procedural medium. It's a procedural medium that facilitates participation. They might bling their phone, but they're not worshiping their phone. Their phone is how they are able to achieve connection with friends, news, fashion trends, geography, find out how to get to some place they've never been, et cetera, et cetera. And this really gives them a tremendous sense of knowledge and even comfort, which is why, for example, if my daughter misplaces her phone, there is a crisis in the house. It's almost akin to like the place is on fire. These young people, they do expect the external world and its institutions to reflect the attributes that they've experienced from technology.
So, Don,
I'll to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, well, I have one, and maybe this will open up the conversation. And I do have some phones muted, so if you have a question and I've got you muted, please drop me a chat and I'll open up your phone. It's just there's been some background noise on a couple of phones. But my question is how does this relate to attracting a new student and keeping them down? They're technophiles. They love the toys. And I'm going to say that, and we talked about it on the phone the other day, it's not just a particular generation or particular demographic. I consider myself one of these new technophiles. For example, I have all the toys in the world, and I go crazy if I can't find my phone. So, how do we attract people like that?
Well, yeah, we're actually going to be getting to that later on. But the fact of the matter is, Bob, you bring up a good point, and that is, you can be a millennial even if you're a baby boomer, if you're brand new to technology and you drank, and it's hard not to drink the technology Kool-Aid. Because if I'm not connected, I feel naked. If I lose the phone, I go berserk. My wife, who's not within earshot, she might as well be 20 years old, because her relation to technology as a baby boomer is now completely, in fact, her Christmas present is the brand new desktop from Apple, because she's got the laptop, she's got the tablet, she's got the iPod, she's got the iPhone, and has actually been able to delineate what task she does is best suited for which technology. And since she writes a variety of columns for like the Lupus newsletter and all that, she's like, you know what, I want the desktop because it'll be better to lay out my newsletter. And I sit there just smiling. And of course, think about flying. You've got technology in front of you. I mean, your dashboard is filled with technology, and the technology keeps getting cooler and cooler, and yet somehow that is not perceived as as technology that is as relevant or cool as what is surrounding them. I think that's something that can be tweaked fairly easily, and in fact, we're going to get to that a little bit later. In fact, probably starting as soon as I pick up again.
Okay, and I think this John Ladley, a good friend of mine from St. Louis, raises a point, and I think you may be coming up to this. Is it a question of redirecting millennials from digital interaction, or supplementing education with more digital content and a different approach? And I think that's a lead into where you're going.
That's exactly where I'm going. You'll recall that I said that museums are undergoing a major transformation. The fact of the matter is there's a tremendous evolution of not only museums, but of most of what we would consider to be traditional institutions. And by traditional institutions, I mean schools, I mean hospitals, obviously I mean all manner of museums, I mean libraries, and ultimately I think we're going to say flight training. And what do we mean by a reinvention? All those attributes that I mentioned before have to be brought in. In other words, we're not going to throw the museum away. We're not going to take all those amazing artifacts and historical, XYZ, and put it back into the basement. What we're going to do is allow the visitor, allow the curious to access this information in many different forms in accordance with what they find of interest. Here in Pittsburgh at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, they had this tremendous epiphany about, I'll say 8 or 9 years ago, which in hindsight you want to kick yourself. They took the paleontologist out of the windowless room in the basement and put the paleontologist onto the main floor with a glass-enclosed laboratory and shared microscopes, so that as the paleontologist is looking through the high-powered microscope, chipping away the sedimentary rock from the fossil, anybody visiting the Hall of Dinosaurs can look through the microscope and share the experience and the revelation and the discovery that the paleontologist has. And since my program was working with all these museums, I sat with the director and I'm like, so it took 100 years for you to figure out that what the paleontologist was doing was actually as exciting, if not more exciting, than looking at a bunch of bones in a cabinet, because it's real time. We're sharing the experience. We're sharing the discovery. And, of course, we both just like shrugged our shoulders, shook our heads, and said, you know what? It's part of the change. It's part of the change in sensitivity. Colleges and universities are part of the traditional institutions that are currently under assault. What are they under assault from? It's called student loan. I mean, millennials, I follow them closely, and many of them said, why do you think we're moving home? Do you think we're moving home because we suddenly think mom and dad are cool? No, we're moving home because there aren't any damn jobs. The economy is terrible for us. And the jobs that are out there, for the most part, are poorly paid. Meanwhile, you and your generation want us to come and intern, and we're sort of smart enough to know that means free labor. Plus, we're wondering, what is the educational ROI? What's the return on the investment? I mean, I was affiliated with a very expensive university, and frankly, my advice to a young person who's not rich would be, you know what, maybe go to a place, or even a community college for a couple of years where you're not going into debt, get your core courses out of the way, then transfer. That seems to make the most financial sense. But we also see that if it's brick and mortar, it is undergoing a transformation, complete transformation. Hospitals. We consulted on the redesign of the Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh because the old hospital looked like a freaking morgue. And the fact of the matter is the children who were going to the hospital to get better, their perception was the complete opposite. So now, and the other irony we found was that children were not allowed to play video games in children's hospital. And we're like, well, what are they supposed to do? Sit in the bed and watch, I don't know, Ellen DeGeneres? I mean, come on. So this transformation of bricks and mortars is really significant. I think that this generation is very much in touch with the community service. I mean, for example, I've always been a big fan of Civil Air Patrol. And when I see Civil Air Patrol with a tent recruiting at the Three Rivers Arts Festival here in Pittsburgh or the Three Rivers Regatta, and I see the young kids there, it's knowing that they're able to do a social service that is so significant for them. This generation has done tremendous stuff with Teach for America and the whole, pay it forward mentality. So the traditional institutions know that if they don't change, even if they don't die, they're going to become increasingly irrelevant. Okay, let's continue some more. These young people today have the capability of experiencing multiple points of view. In other words, they are able to see the world through the eyes of others much more than previous generations. Why? Because when we were growing up, what we saw on TV was the quintessential, the ideal American family. And, as an Italian American in Brooklyn, New York, I would sit there and watch Leave It to Beaver and My Three Sons and scratch my head going, who are these people? Because they're sure not on my block. And of course, it was all about a socialization of this is the ideal family. That's all gone out the window. And now with reality television revealing the underside of our societies, they realize there are so many different points of view. Well, what we've got to do is tap into that. And one of the ways technology does that is by allowing these people, young people, to immerse themselves in both linear and nonlinear digital media. By immerse themselves, I basically mean become an actor in that world. I always find it ironic that there's so little interest in learning how to fly, but put these kids in a war game or put them in a fantasy world where they're flying all over the place, and they love it. They just absolutely love it. And technology, we know, facilitates the experience of immersion, and flying in a plane is as immersive as diving into the water. I mean, it seems like it should be low-hanging fruit for us.
And that's exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to. I thought you were at a pausing point, and that's exactly some of the points I intuitively. This is why I was so excited to have you here, because intuitively I agree with you. So please continue. I'm interrupting. I apologize.
Because all of this, Bob, leads to the element of storytelling that is so much a part of their existence. When you finally get a move beyond the fact that the reality shows, for the most part, show you disgusting human beings, and Survivor has moved from something where it was about the fortitude of the human spirit to how we can do each other in and what have you. I mean, all these reality shows are in fact stories. They're storytelling. Fiction has always been storytelling. We now have more non-fictional storytelling than we've ever had before. And technology allows for the capturing of these experiences in ways that have never before been possible. I mean, for example, think about dash cam. I mean, we're now seeing between police cruisers and what have you, put the camera on your dashboard. Those of us who love history, I mean, the gun camera, was anything more exciting than the gun camera? when you know, and you get on YouTube and you're like watching air-to-air combat, air-to-ground. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be war. It could simply be weather. I mean, put a dash cam on your plane and capture weather, hook up with the Weather Channel, and it seems to me that, damn, you got a natural there. Now, all of this further feeds into the fact that this is a post-literate generation. They don't read. All right? Now, does that make them dumb? Not in the least. If they're post-literate, if they're not reading, how are they acquiring this knowledge? They're acquiring it primarily through experiential learning. And that experiential learning is everything from playing video games to they all have cars, you know, getting out there, doing things, hanging with their friends. You know, when I think about my daughter, she's 26. She's been to all 50 states and about 15 foreign countries. She can talk to you about the kingdom of Lesotho in Africa, not because she ever read anything about it, but because she was there for 4 weeks on a school field trip. So think about it. Get these kids in the plane. I mean, just run them out there, because once they experience things, they will see the potentiality that's in it. Now, when you are post-literate and you are experientially focused, what results? What results is the efficacy of applied knowledge. In other words, these are kids that love to go to amusement parks, theme parks, roller coasters. So that's nothing compared to being up thousands of feet in the air and having the agency, the ability to bank that plane, to really experience the sky according to your terms. We know that reality television is a laboratory of social and relationship experimentation. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, take a look at driving your truck in the Arctic. That's a show. Coast Guard Coast Guard Alaska, Coast Guard Florida, is real-life adventures of the Coast Guardsmen, and you can't get a better recruiting tool if you try. Role-playing games, very, very important, and in fact, an adolescent rite of passage. There are flight simulators all over the place. They have not been great sellers, and I'm like, okay, disconnect there. And I think a lot of the disconnect is there's no story going on. And I think if you were to start teaching along the lines of, here's what we want to do. We want to get from point A to point B where we're going to pick up an organ for donation and we're going to get back. How do we do that? What's the science and the knowledge we need to learn in order to do that, to make things, to really have that positive impact? When you have interactive digital media, you're talking about replayability. They're able to do it over and over. I mean, think about flight sims for regular pilots. I mean, it's literally trial and error. I know I'm not going to do this. Let me do it. Let me try it another way. It's one of the things I was really excited about at Redbird was the enjoyment and the ease of the flight sim that was going on there. And the other thing to realize is it's a 24/7, 365 urban lifestyle, no matter where you live. I mean, you know, we used to joke for our generation, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Guess what? That's caught on, except it's 5 o'clock somewhere, it's midnight somewhere, it's 3 o'clock in the morning somewhere. In my program at Carnegie Mellon, if you came in at 10 o'clock in the morning, the place was deserted. If you came in at 2 o'clock in the morning, you thought you were at a bakery. I mean, it was the joint was jumping. So we're going to have to absorb and address this reality in order to win them over to what we love to do in terms of flying. The other reality is they understand the marketplace. All right, these kids are not dumb. They're actually rather frugal. They know that they need to prioritize spending. They believe in evolutionary capitalism. 60% of my students were from China, and they were unbelievable. And in fact, I do work in China, and I go over there saying, I don't quite understand this Chinese communism, and they would go, no, what we're doing is we have Chinese socialism. And I would say to them, but your Chinese socialism sure looks like evolutionary capitalism, and they would wink and nod and smile. And it's like, yeah, they get it. They get it. The other thing is innovation equals evolution. And so ways in which we can think about being innovative are extremely important. Why are this constant generation of new technologies appealing? Because there's almost always some new innovation that responds to either a market demand or some genius idea that Steve Jobs thought up. Okay, let's. In fact, I'm near the end, and let me just finish, and then we can really open it up. On an even more positive side, this is a very optimistic generation when it comes to what the future can hold. I believe that they have in their mind that if you can imagine it, then why can't you do it? I subscribe to a variety of sites like Gizmag, which come up with the latest technologies that are going on. And I have to tell you, there are things being invented now. I feel like we're on the cusp of a brand new technological age, not necessarily an industrial age, but a new technological age, because I'm seeing technology applications that, frankly, I could not imagine. And that was kind of a bellwether for me. I mean, I'm 60 years old, and I was like, when they start coming up with things that I could never have thought of, then I'm going to feel pretty good, and I'm also going to recognize that it's time to be Yoda and the wise man rather than the all-knowledgeable, omniscient teacher. And that's what's really happened. What do I mean by if you can imagine it, why can't we do it? Take a look at the push towards sustainability, towards clean energy, towards universal communication, the unbelievable spread and acceptance of replication technologies such as in 3D printing. I'm a mentor for a high school and a junior high. They're now putting 3D printers in elementary schools, and these children are coming up with ideas and things to print. And even if it's just a toy or a trinket, what is being absorbed by these children is that you can have an idea and you can bring it to life. And it doesn't have to be overly complicated in terms of who you know, what have you. It's there. Next to my building in Pittsburgh was the University of Pittsburgh Regenerative Medicine Institute, where I saw them growing livers and muscle tissue. And all you have to do is Google. Yesterday there was the Chinese fellow whose hand was severed in an accident, and the Chinese physicians attached it to his leg because there was a blood vessel there that could keep the arm alive while they fixed up his hand. And I'm reading this going, this isn't fiction. This is happening now. And, of course, with robotics and animatronics, Google, which has its second largest lab here in Pittsburgh, Google is now buying up robotic companies left and right. They have like a few billion in the bank, and we're even wondering what's with the robots. But remember, we have, Amazon telling us that they're hoping to deliver packages through drones in the not-too-distant future. So kids are tuned into technology, and an airplane is technology combined with art. And you've got this fledgling generation of whole brain thinkers, which is right brain, left brain, which is sensitivity, artistry combined with technology. It seems like your industry should be ripe for exploitation, initiation, information, and then exploitation of that market. So golly, I apologize for talking this long and all that, but that is my presentation for the most part of what I presented at Migration.
Okay, so, and that's I appreciate that. We're going to open up the floor here. And I'm going to lead it off by saying, okay, we've stated the problem. The millennials, or the millennials, understand technology, embrace it, use it. Certainly look at us. Most of the people on this call are either using cell phones or voice over internet protocol, which nobody would have dreamed of even 5, 6, 7 years ago. So how do we convince them or show them that flying is cool? There's no other way to say it. That it's something that's viable, enjoyable. Yeah, get them in the airplane, but the trick is getting them to the airport to get them in the airplane.
Well, you're going to let Don answer that, but I was just going to make a comment on something. This is Don Knight. On Don's presentation, I really enjoyed it, and if you haven't seen the YouTube of it that Jim, can't even think of his name right off, Zoom, did there, that
Jerry Gregoire.
Jerry Gregoire is what we were thinking of.
Well, no, I was thinking of the guy that recorded it. Jerry Gregoire is the chief of Redbird, but I'm thinking of Jim Campbell. That I think it's on. Anyways, it's either on Redbird's site or it's on YouTube. But you need to watch it. But yeah, aviation. I think we need to look at get away from the financial end of it and get into the love of aviation and see how much we can give people, these millennium people, on entertainment type things that relate to aviation, to learn to fly, where they can pick up a lot and get the idea and have fun without spending a lot of money. And then when they get to the money part of it, to fly in the airplane, they'll have a good idea. Is that, Don, does that make any sense to you as far as what you're thinking?
Yeah, I don't think that the finances are actually going to be a problem, because when you think about it, these are people, and I'm going to stop saying young people, because I agree with Bob that you've got the older millennials for whom money is even less of an issue. But if they want something, they go out and buy it. You know, there's an Apple store a block from me, and I always know there's something new coming out because there's a line that extends completely down the block because they have to have it. I think the real issue is you're not going to go flying unless you're at an airfield, and so you've got to get them out there to see it. And how you do that is, I don't know how many of you have reached out to the local boards of education and said, you know what, we want to, especially with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, we are more than happy to provide a forum and a setting for the teaching of aeronautics, even if it's one glorious day, where you come on out and we're going to show you and teach you about lift. We're going to tell you about why a propeller works. We're going to explain the gauges that are in there. We're going to show you how an airplane is both complicated and extremely simple at the same time. Basically make them an offer they can't refuse. The reason and here's some proof for this. There's a World War II submarine that is docked in the Ohio River near the Carnegie Science Center. And that submarine used to have a tour time that would take you about 20 minutes to go through the submarine. And early on it was wonderful because you still had submariners from the Second World War, from the Cold War, who lived in Pittsburgh and who were overjoyed to give a first-person account. Time passed. If you were in World War II, you're 90 years old now, and even if you were in Vietnam, you're in your mid-70s, just about. And I said, they were thinking of closing the sub. And I said to them, you know what? Give me the stuff. I want the stuff. And by I meant the Carnegie Mellon Entertainment Technology. They said, hey, what do you want to do with it? And I said, you've got so many cool scientific principles at work on a submarine, and you have so many human interest stories. We just have to unlock them. We just have to unleash them. And so we installed, I think it was 20 mini touch screens that worked from mini computers, and in it, when they went to the forward torpedo room, they learned about battery, motors that are driven by batteries. They learned about the gyroscope. When they went to the conning tower, the command station, they learned how the refraction that occurred on the periscope. When they went to the cruise quarters, we set up a whole series of first-person accounts by sailors about, see, how did we survive, 3 months under the sea? What was it like to be depth-charged by the Japanese? What was fun? And they went from 20 minutes as the average amount of time that a visitor would spend on the sub to between 45 minutes and 90 minutes. And it was like, so what changed? What changed was we were now sharing with them the stories, and science is a story of this amazing technological thing called a submarine, and we were doing it as they wanted. In other words, if you wanted to do all those screens and learn all that technology, you were on there for an hour and a half. If you were only interested in how does a torpedo work and how do you go to the bathroom, then you were there less. You still got the knowledge you wanted. So that's an example. How many kids today say, gee, I want to be in submarines? Not many. But the ones that are going to the Carnegie Science Center and going on the USS Raikkonen, they sure as hell are learning more about it than they are going to learn from a book.
I can attest that have been to that exhibit, and it's pretty darn cool.
That's John Ladley, by the way.
Yeah, I have a question here. We've done the STEM thing here in St. Louis, and we've kept careful numbers of it as our Flight Instructors Association, and we're getting less than 5% of the kids we talk to in schools to come out to the airport or to the STEM event. But once they come out, where we are, we get them to go up and we hold them. So I wanted to ask a question on the right brain side. I've found some luck with just taking one kid, older kids up, not younger kids, and letting them fly. And just for some reason, it's the artistry and the some of them seem to be very attracted to the ballet in the sky, just making this machine move through the air. And wondering if there's any suggestions on how to promote the right brain side of this, the creative side of this.
I think you've just started to do so. I mean, it is in fact a ballet of the air. I mean, the clouds are everything from a painting to a Rorschach test. Light that you see up there is absolutely, amazing. One of the things that I think you've got the right idea where you invite the older students who are then able to go back and share how cool was the experience that they had. And I mean,
Don, try again, please.
Was there somebody talking? I'm not sure.
Yeah, you got stepped on. I killed that mic. Go ahead and try it again.
Okay, all right. So every one of the art forms, every single one of the art forms is manifest in flight. I mean, there is incredible sound that occurs. I mean, there is incredible vision that occurs. There's astounding dance and ballet, as you put it, that occurs. It's all there. I mean, my wife doesn't really like to fly, but there was a barnstormer not too long ago, and I said, come on, let's go up. in the biplane. And when she came down, when we came down, I said, "Well, what do you think?" And she said, "The Earth looks so beautiful. The topography was absolutely astounding." And I used to take my students it's a graduate program at Carnegie Mellon. I used to take them on a cruise, like an ocean cruise. They have these one-night cruise to nowhere, and the university would have a conniption, and they'd say, "What are you just going out there drinking?" And I would say, you know so little. I said, the fact of the matter is, I take them out to sea because within the realm of entertainment, every cruise ship has got multiple restaurants. It's got a Las Vegas show. It's a casino. It's a hotel. And I said, you know what? For all of my students, they've been to better restaurants, seen better shows, more comfortable hotels. But what they've never experienced was the sun setting into the ocean. And what they've never experienced, and they all come back and tell me, is the wind. They've never felt the wind like you can feel it on the ocean. You've got all that you don't have the ocean, but you've got the sky. You've got the air. I mean, you've got the strata. You've got so many untapped artistic resources that just need to be exploited.
Well, what I'm hearing out of this conversation, Don, and I'll see if anybody else agrees or disagrees, is that perhaps we focus so much on the technological side of flying and the safety side, and safety is paramount. Don't anybody take me wrong, but we focus so much on that we've forgotten to say, you know what? I just like seeing the houses get small, and you should see it.
Right.
I mean, does anybody? How does every person on this call is a member of NAFI, I believe, because you got the newsletter. Every person here, I believe, is passionate about flying. Do we do a good job conveying the passion? Because what I've heard out of all...
No, we don't. We don't. Yeah, we don't. And that's why I was asking the question. Is I'm looking for ways to promote it as just fun. Forget. I got in a lot of trouble with our meeting because I said, forget the career stuff and forget, forget the technology. Just come up here and, I admit I cheat a little bit since my airplane doesn't have a roof, but
okay.
It is, and I just, there's got to be. I'm looking for something really radically different to pull that smarmy, snotty 17-year-old out of the airport. No, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm signing off.
Yeah,
Jim?
I just think a lot of its technology has overwhelmed the beauty. In other words, the left brain has overtaken the right brain in this Y generation.
Well, I think maybe not. I think maybe because they demand high-resolution monitors. They want their games to look absolutely perfect. I think Don will agree with that.
This has been a question. I apologize for
Oh, okay. It sounded like a statement. I'm sorry, John.
Yeah.
But I think what it is what we've failed to do is say, we bury them right off on the first. We bury them with all of this important stuff, forgetting that first let's go to theatrical terms. Let's get them on the stage and let them be a ham for a minute. Then we'll worry about teaching them what a proscenium is.
I totally agree with you. I mean, let them not run around, but let them kick the tires. Let them see, let them hear it, let them. I mean, for so many of these kids, if they touch finally touch the fuselage or the wing of a Cessna 172, and they realize, my God, this is so light. I mean, this is the tactile, right? They've got to have the tactile touch as well, and it is beautiful. What I would also suggest though is a two-prong attack, and that is hook up with the children's museums and invite the teachers at the children's museums, and if you can get one who wants to go up with her kid, ask the kid to make a movie of what it's like flying, and show it to the other kids at the Children's Museum, and I have a funny feeling that you would light a spark among them. And among the 17-year-olds, what's interesting about that is we do what are called adventure modules. And adventure modules are, because my kids are grad students in their mid-20s, early 20s, and it's a way of humbling everyone. The old days, we all were in the service. We knew exactly what people were talking about. We now got 1% of the population defending 99%. You mentioned boot camp. They don't know what that is. There's the only leveling experience they've had or shared experience is that they were on Facebook or they played video games. And so what we would do is extremely brilliant and put them on a ropes course at one of the skiers during the summers and the fall when there's no snow. You can do like confidence course and building course. And to see this genius kid with a 1200 SAT or DRE, whatever the hell, and there they are calling for their mother while they're on a zip line. It's like, you know what? This has served many purposes. This has let you know that there's so much more to learn. There's so much more of who you are that you need to come to grips with, and it will make you stronger and it will make you wiser, and how much we need each other. And I think that you could do more of that.
Okay.
I'd get them out there at winning a contest or for doing good in school and doing bad in school. I'd say, come on, we're going up. And everything is word of mouth. And it's word of mouth that's also generated by YouTube. So if you could get them up there with their cameras, their phones, and they make an experience of it and it's put up on YouTube and they share it with their friends, I got a funny feeling that the curiosity of flight will definitely take wing, no pun intended.
Well, that's a great way to say it. Does anybody else have anything they want to ask or mention of Don? I really appreciate his time. I'm sorry, who was that, please?
It's Jim again. I really enjoyed listening to you, and I think you have a lot of very valid points. One of my concerns has been, maybe again I'll pose this as a question, is that there's this big gap, it seems to me, and I've done a lot of instructing. It's really been more on a professional basis and people looking towards a career. Nevertheless, what you're saying has a very valid point, but it seems to me with all these kids now in this latest generation, there's a big gap here between the aesthetics of it and the technicalities of it, and we're not able to close that gap. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to close the gap.
Well, I think that we've touched upon some of the possibilities, because it's not just your industry that is suffering from this. For example, computer science in America is dealing with an astounding shortage of young people who are interested in computer science. If you take a look at computer science programs in America, probably 40 to 50% of all their students are foreign students. And so we're going back to saying, all that cool technology that you've used, without the computer science, you don't get it. And one thing my partner, the late Randy Pausch, did was create a teaching methodology called ALICE. And ALICE is now the most widely used, what do we want to call it, edutainment for the teaching of computer science in the United States. And the whole idea is to get middle school kids interested in computer science by letting them realize why they're learning this. And they do that through various cartoons. for example, The Sims. Okay, The Sims is the biggest selling video game of all time. Before he died, Randy managed to get Electronic Arts to donate the character library of The Sims to the Alice program. So all of a sudden you had middle school kids who were dragging and dropping algorithmic phrases, things like move forward X number of steps. When you reach the wall, turn around X, Y, Z. And they could drag and drop these algorithmic phrases into an equation, and by so doing, they saw in front of them how the character from The Sims would then come to life and move. And they realized the importance of learning computer science and algorithmic thinking, because that's how you bring life to Woody on Toy Story and how Buzz Lightyear is able to do all that stuff. And it is now responsible for a major increase in the number of young people interested in computer science. It's going to be a few years before that generation is now college age and is going to go into school, but it's the fun and the joy that they're getting out of putting together algorithms that is now enticing them. I think we have to find the analogy for flight.
You know, and that's exactly what I was going to bring up, and maybe that's a good place to sum up, because we've been here for an hour and you've been very generous with your time. It's getting them in the door. The reason I learned how to fly, and I bring up the houses getting small, and I'm talking just strictly personal, was my very first flight was in the back of a Lufthansa 707 when I was 9 years old. And I've remembered that to this day. And maybe we need to do a better, and I couldn't believe how cool it was. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to recapture that. Everything else will follow. Joe Reel sent me a message, and it may be open to everybody here, saying, talking about imagine the positive impact of a professionally developed reality show pertaining to GA training, and think how well a professionally developed show about a 16-year-old learning how to fly might be received. And the point is that I don't think we're showing the art and the beauty, as you said. The fusion of technology and art is out there, and I think we as flight instructors, we as a flight training industry, have to remind ourselves that, you know what, it's okay to say, this is fun.
It's not only that, Bob, but not too long ago, and maybe it might have been a month to 6 weeks, there was one of those Alaska, Life in Alaska shows where, the airplane is the car. And it was the story of this flight instructor pilot's 16-year-old daughter, and how he taught her to fly, how she made mistakes early on, and then her first solo flight. I mean, granted, I like flying, I love aviation, but it was the human story that was so. And when that 16-year-old landed the plane on her first solo flight, I'm turning to my wife going, I did get the LASIK surgery. I can see now. Maybe I should. I've always wanted to do this. Maybe I should, because I'm looking at, well, the 16-year-old did it. Maybe a 60-year-old can do it,
Yes, you can, and we'll take care of you.
It is definitely the stories.
Okay.
All right, well, I don't want to keep anybody any longer, but...
Well, you've been... I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's listening. I mean, and Bob, I appreciate you inviting me, because I'm more than happy to give the time, because this is an important topic.
Well, thank you very much, and I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned here, and trust me, we're going to tap you on the shoulder again. Don't worry about that.
All right, Bob, thank you, and thank everybody who was listening. I'm really appreciative, and I'm going to be non-politically correct and say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's.
And I will echo those sentiments and broaden it out to Happy Holidays, and I'm going to ask all of you to go out, find a new student, and as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, give the gift of flight. Show them a flight. Maybe you can get them hooked that way. And in the meantime, please, please fly safe. We want to see you all in the coming years, and have a wonderful holiday. And we'll see you all next month. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.